the forgotten shadow. History is often written in ink, but its truest stories are carved in silence. Long before nations took form, before borders and empires and the pride of kings, there existed an order that refused the light. Their chronicles were erased, their symbols outlawed, and their very name forbidden to be spoken. And yet, every few centuries, when war or plague strikes the earth, their shadow returns. The Black Knights, the Darkened Order, an echo of men who walked between the world of the living and something far older, far colder than death itself. They were said to ride when the moon was hidden, silent horsemen clad in armor blacker than obsidian, carrying no flag, no crest, no call to arms. Villagers who saw them described their presence as unnatural. The air grew still, the wind stopped, and even the birds fell silent. Wherever they passed, the night deepened. And when dawn came, something or someone had vanished. Historians of the church dismissed these tales as superstition. But among the old archives of Eastern Europe, in forgotten monasteries and half-burned scrolls, there are fragments that tell another story. A story of an order born not from faith, but from knowledge too dangerous to preserve. In one such record, found in the ruins of a Cistercian abbey in 1624, a monk wrote of warriors who seek the unlight. He described them as men who renounce the cross to follow the eye, a symbol older than God, older than man, the eye that sees all things in shadow. These knights were said to have uncovered something buried beneath the Holy Lands during the First Crusade. A relic that could not be destroyed, only guarded. A fragment of darkness that consumed all who tried to understand it. No one knows their true purpose, only that they appeared when history was about to change. Before great wars, before plagues, before kingdoms fell into ruin. It was as if they were not protecting the world, but preparing it for something. Some claim they were the last survivors of the fallen Templars, corrupted by secrets unearthed in the sands. Others say they were something else entirely, an ancient remnant from a civilization that existed before recorded time, before even light and darkness were divided. Whatever truth lies buried beneath their legend, one thing is certain. When the Black Knights appeared, history itself seemed to hold its breath. Echoes of the First Crusade. In the 11th century, when Europe burned with the fever of holy war, the first Crusaders marched east, chasing salvation through blood. They believed themselves chosen, soldiers of light, purging the lands of unbelief. But amid the chaos, a smaller band moved with another purpose. They did not march for Christendom, nor for gold, nor glory. Their leader's name was struck from every surviving record. But his symbol, the blackened eye crossed by two wings, still appears, carved faintly into broken stones from Antioch to Jerusalem. When the great siege ended and the Crusaders stormed the city, they uncovered tombs older than the prophets. Most plundered what they found: relics, bones, gold. Yet a handful of knights descended deeper, beneath a collapsed temple where the earth itself seemed to hum. There, behind a wall of volcanic glass, they discovered a chamber untouched by time. No cross adorned it, no script of Latin or Greek, only a seal of obsidian, polished so dark it reflected nothing, as though it swallowed light itself. At its center was the mark of the eye, and around it, an inscription in a language that has never been identified, though fragments of it would later appear on coded parchments confiscated by the Inquisition. What they found there was never written in the Church's histories. But from that night onward, these men were changed. They left the crusade under the veil of illness, returning to Europe in silence. Those who had fought beside them said their eyes had turned hollow, not blind, but empty, as if they had seen something that broke the boundary between light and dark. In the years that followed, strange things began to happen. Villages near the Rhine whispered of armored figures moving through fog, leaving behind circles burned into the soil. In France, entire companies vanished during the night, their tents still warm, their weapons undisturbed. And in England, a priest recorded the appearance of riders in black, on the eve of a comet, men who moved soundlessly, whose horses cast no shadow even beneath the sun. The Church investigated, of course, but the few inquisitors sent to trace the sightings never returned. Their last letters spoke of voices from the earth, of dreams filled with a black horizon and a single unblinking eye staring from the void. By the time the Second Crusade began, the name of the order had already taken root in rumor. They were called the Knights of the Black Seal or Custodes Tenebrae, the Keepers of Shadow. But among the fearful, another title grew more common: the Blackened Order, or simply the Black Knights. They began to appear in the margins of manuscripts, half-hidden sketches of armor etched in soot and charcoal. Their existence was never acknowledged by the Vatican, but too many accounts spoke of them for it to be mere superstition. In one chronicle of 1187, written by a Syrian monk, there is a passage describing warriors of night who ride before calamity. He wrote that they appeared days before Saladin retook Jerusalem, a warning, perhaps, or an omen. The monk claimed to have spoken with one of them, though no record tells how. The knight gave no name, no allegiance, only a single sentence before vanishing into the dunes. The world remembers the light. We protect the dark. The phrase appears again centuries later, in a codex confiscated from alchemists in Prague. Different language, same words, same symbol. How could a secret phrase travel across nations and centuries, unless the order itself endured? Historians dismiss such links as coincidence. But coincidences, when they stretch through time like a black thread, begin to resemble something else: intention. During the Inquisition, dozens of secret brotherhoods were destroyed, their members tortured into confessions of heresy. Yet not a single record mentions a captured Black Knight. It is as though they were smoke, untouchable, unseen, existing only where light refused to reach. Some claim they learned to bend darkness itself, to hide in plain sight. Others whisper they were never entirely human after what they discovered beneath Antioch, that they carried a curse sealed within their blood, bound to guard the relic forever. There are fragments that seem to confirm it. A 14th-century physician wrote of treating a wounded stranger in armor black as pitch. When he removed a piece of the metal, he found the flesh beneath cold and unbleeding, as though the body were no longer living. He described it as a vessel moved by will alone. The report was seized by church authorities the next day. The physician was never seen again. Across Europe, their legend deepened. Miners in the Carpathians claimed to hear hoofbeats echoing beneath the mountains. Sailors spoke of dark riders seen walking across the surface of frozen lakes. Every account carried the same detail: a mark of two wings crossing a single eye, the seal of shadow. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they vanished. For more than 100 years, no trace, no mention. Not until the Black Death swept through Europe. In the midst of that plague, witnesses once again saw figures in black, riding through the fog-choked streets of dying towns. They carried no weapons, no torches, only silence. When they passed, the dead were said to stop rotting, as if the corruption of death itself feared them. Were they bringers of doom or its wardens? No one could tell. But the idea took root that the Black Knights were not fighting for mankind's salvation, but for a fragile balance, keeping something ancient from awakening. If this is true, then the seal unearthed during the First Crusade was not a relic at all. It was a prison, and the knights who swore to guard it were not heroes. They were its jailers. Through centuries of silence, their shadow stretched behind history's wars and cataclysms, a hidden hand shaping the rhythm of collapse and rebirth. Empires rose and fell. Faiths were born and burned. But somewhere, always unseen, the Black Knights waited, keepers of a darkness the world was never meant to remember. The Oath of Silence. The 14th century was an age of ruin. Kingdoms fractured under the weight of faith and greed, and the church hunted shadows in its own reflection. But as the world's noise grew louder, the sound of steel, of sermons, of screams, something else was retreating into the quiet. The Black Knights, whose whispers once haunted every battlefield, began to fade. They did not die. They withdrew. And in their withdrawal, they bound themselves to a vow that would erase them from memory. Among the few surviving traces is a parchment discovered in a monastery near Toledo, scorched around its edges, written in an archaic Latin no scholar has ever fully translated. It speaks of a night when the keepers gathered beneath a moonless sky and swore the oath that silences the world. The document calls it Taciturnum Pactum, the oath of silence. It was more than secrecy. It was transformation. From that night forward, they would no longer speak of what they had seen beneath the Holy Lands. They would not write, nor record, nor remember in words. They would let the world forget them, because only through forgetting could the relic remain buried. Those who took the oath were said to seal their voices within their armor, whispering the vow into blackened steel before it was forged shut. Their armor became their tombs, their silence eternal. To break the vow was to awaken the thing they had sworn to contain. In the centuries that followed, fragments of their presence surfaced like bones through soil. A temple beneath the Alps, lined with basalt statues of knights without faces. An underground chapel in Venice, where candles never burned but shadows moved as though stirred by unseen breath. A graveyard in Brittany, its tombstones carved with no names, only the faint image of the eye. Every trace pointed to a single truth. The oath was not a metaphor. It was a living bond, a covenant written not on parchment but into the very souls of those who served. Some legends say they learned to silence more than their voices, that they could quiet the sound of their own hearts, that they could walk unseen, unheard. Their presence only felt when the air itself trembled, and when they appeared, it was never without reason. In 1348, when the Black Death reached Florence, witnesses described figures in armor moving through the night, tending to the dying without a word. Those they touched did not scream. They simply fell still, as though soothed into an eternal sleep. To the terrified survivors, these nights became both angels and demons. Healers or reapers, none could say. In the decades that followed, entire orders of monks vanished after recording encounters with them. A chronicler in Avignon wrote that, "They come when the balance breaks." He believed the plague had been more than disease. It was an echo of the same darkness sealed centuries earlier. The nights were not causing it. They were containing it. But containment demands sacrifice. Each generation of the order was bound to renew the oath, and each renewal required silence greater than the one before. To become one of them, a man had to surrender his past, his lineage, his very name. He would walk out of the world as if never born. Only his armor would remain, a vessel for his duty. Over time, the oath consumed them. They ceased to be men at all. Witnesses began to describe them as hollow. Their voices a vibration felt in the bones, not heard by the ear. One 15th-century alchemist wrote of seeing a knight remove his gauntlet to reveal not flesh, but shadow, dense as smoke, shaped like a hand. He called it the price of silence. By the dawn of the Renaissance, the Black Knights were no longer feared by the powerful because the powerful no longer believed they existed. The world had turned toward reason, and reason has no room for ghosts. But belief is not what sustains the dark. It endures whether named or not. Every few generations, signs reappeared. Villages abandoned overnight. Unmarked graves found in perfect circles. Black feathers discovered in locked chambers. Always the same mark carved somewhere unseen. The eye. Always silence after. A scholar from Prague claimed to have decoded a message hidden in the architecture of Gothic cathedrals. A pattern of geometry that, when traced across Europe, formed the outline of wings. At their center, the coordinates pointed to a place in the Pyrenees, a valley where no birds fly and compasses fail. Local legends speak of an ancient fortress hidden within its mists, where black armored figures stand guard over a single sealed chamber. No one who has gone there has returned. If the tale is true, then the oath of silence was not an end. It was preparation, a retreat from history into the shadows, waiting for the moment when the seal beneath Antioch weakens again. For the Black Knights were never meant to triumph. Their purpose was endurance, to exist between the living and the forgotten, guardians of a darkness the world must never see. And so they remain, unheard, unseen, their silence stretching through the centuries like a veil. Because sometimes, silence is not absence. It is protection. It is warning. It is the echo of something vast still sleeping beneath the world. The vanishing orders. By the dawn of the Renaissance, the great knightly orders that once shaped the world began to crumble. The Templars burned. The Hospitallers fractured. The Teutonic Knights scattered into politics and mercenary bands. But the Black Knights, they did not fall. They simply vanished. While the world turned its gaze to light, knowledge, and discovery, they descended deeper into the dark. For the rise of reason did not banish mystery, it only drove it underground. Across the archives of Europe, strange disappearances marked their fading trail. Entire monasteries erased from royal maps. Vaults emptied not of gold, but of documents. Witnesses silenced before they could speak. What little was known of them became the obsession of scholars who searched for ghosts among history's shadows. In 1479, a Florentine historian named Lorenzo della Vigna claimed to have found proof of the order's survival. In his private journal, later confiscated by the Medici, he described a hidden manuscript sealed in wax and written in a cipher of numbers and symbols. When decoded, it revealed a chilling phrase repeated in a spiral across the page. "We remain unseen, for the night still breathes." Lorenzo vanished 2 weeks later. His house was found untouched. His notes burned from within, as if fire had begun inside the ink itself. During the following century, the pattern repeated. Every scholar who sought to uncover the truth of the Darkened Order disappeared or descended into madness. Some left behind letters describing the same experience. Dreams of endless corridors, black-armored figures watching from the edge of sight, whispers promising knowledge too terrible to keep. It was during this time that the Church began to notice a quiet epidemic among its own. Monks who woke speaking dead languages, architects who built cathedrals with impossible geometry, confessors who claimed to hear voices not from the living but from the earth. Each, in time, was linked to the same mark, the unblinking eye with crossed wings. In Spain, the Inquisition sealed entire convents said to be haunted by the Silent Ones. Witnesses told of shadows moving behind walls, armor glinting in candlelight, hymns sung in reverse Latin. When the priests opened the crypts, they found no bodies, only empty suits of armor arranged in prayer. The armor was black as glass, untouched by rust or time. In Germany, alchemists recorded visions of the dark riders of knowledge, who offered formulas for eternal silence, the power to separate the soul from its body without death. Those who attempted the ritual either disappeared or were found lifeless, their eyes blackened, their tongues turned to ash. To the few who dared to study these accounts, one theory emerged. The Black Knights were purging the world of forbidden knowledge. Every secret unearthed that threatened the fragile balance between light and dark was erased. Not by chance, but by their silent hand. They did not serve good or evil. They served the equilibrium, for the world must never lean too far toward either. Too much light blinds, too much darkness consumes, and the Black Knights stood at the border, ensuring that neither swallowed the other. By the 17th century, they were believed extinct, a medieval superstition, a myth of terrified peasants. But deep beneath the catacombs of Paris, explorers found something that rewrote those assumptions. In 1731, a tunnel collapse revealed a hidden passage leading to an underground chamber. On its walls were hundreds of carvings, each depicting a knight in black armor, arranged in a perfect spiral around a central altar of obsidian. At the altar's center, an inscription in archaic Latin read, "When the stars fall silent, we rise again." The chamber was sealed the following year. All records of it were confiscated by royal decree. Those who entered the site were sworn to secrecy. Most of them never spoke again. A few were found years later, wandering the streets of Paris, whispering of men without hearts and an endless night beneath the city. Yet even as they withdrew into legend, the world continued to feel their presence. Strange orders arose and fell, echoing fragments of their creed. Secret brotherhoods in Prague and Venice adopted their symbols, their rituals, their silence. But these were imitations, pale reflections of something much older and deeper. For the true Black Knights were no longer an organization. They were an inheritance, passed not through blood, but through calling. Some scholars believe their line continues still, hidden among the world's forgotten sects. Whispers tell of modern groups that meet once every century in abandoned monasteries to renew an ancient vow. They wear no armor now, but their insignia endures. Two wings crossed over a single eye. There are unconfirmed reports of such gatherings in remote regions. A ruined fortress in Romania where no sound echoes. An island in the North Sea where compasses spin endlessly. A monastery in the Himalayas where black banners hang though no monks remain. All are connected by one strange detail. Each site sits upon geological anomalies, places where magnetism fails and time behaves irregularly. Scientists call them faults. Historians call them myths. But to those who know the symbol, they are something else entirely. The anchors of the seal. It is said that each anchor holds a fragment of the darkness once found beneath Antioch. The same power the first knight swore to contain. And every few centuries, the anchors weaken. When they do, the silence stirs. The world begins to fracture, as it always has, through war, disease, or despair. And somewhere in that moment of collapse, the Black Knights rise again. Silent, unseen, keeping the balance between what must remain hidden and what must never be found. Their order has no end, because their oath was not to history, but to eternity. The relic of shadows. Every legend hides a core of truth, buried beneath centuries of dust and disbelief. For the Black Knights, that truth lay not in their deeds, but in what they guarded. Long before their silence, before the oath and the vanishing, there was a discovery. A relic unearthed in the desert, beneath the bones of empires, beneath the blood-soaked sand of Antioch. This name has been lost, but the old chronicles call it Umber Day, the shadow of God. Those who uncovered it were not searching for darkness. They were crusaders, seeking holy ground, relics of saints, symbols of light. But what they found was a mirror that did not reflect. A shard of something vast. Not stone, not metal, but a substance that seemed to drink the world around it. When torchlight touched it, the flame dimmed. When breath reached it, the air grew heavy. When prayer rose over it, the words died before leaving the tongue. At first they believed it was a cursed idol of pagan faith. Yet one among them, the nameless knight who would later found the Darkened Order, felt something different. He said it was not evil. It was the absence of evil, the void that existed before creation itself. The silence before the first word. They tried to bury it again, but the earth rejected it. They cast it into fire, and the flames froze. So they carried it with them, hidden beneath armor, believing it a test of faith. But faith is fragile in the face of the unknown. By the time they reached Europe, every man who had touched the relic had changed. Some could no longer sleep, others ceased to age. One knight was said to have wept black tears until his eyes turned to glass. It was then they understood. The relic was not merely an object. It was alive or something close to life, fed not on blood or light, but on memory. Where it lingered, stories faded, faces blurred. Entire villages seemed forgotten by history. The relic consumed remembrance itself. The church declared such tales heresy, but the order knew the truth. This thing could not be destroyed, only contained. And so they became its guardians, bound by the first oath of silence, not out of devotion, but out of necessity. For every word spoken about the relic gave it strength. Every attempt to describe it allowed it to reach further into the minds of men. The ancient texts warn of its whispers, dreams that echo like chants through stone corridors, promising knowledge and eternity. Those who listened too long were hollowed from within, their souls drawn into the relic's reflection. It was said that, inside its darkness, entire worlds could be seen, visions of ages long gone or yet to come. Some glimpsed civilizations that had fallen before humanity ever rose. Others saw their own deaths playing endlessly in the black surface. Centuries later, when alchemists and mystics sought forbidden truths, fragments of this same power resurfaced. Powders that could absorb light, metals that seemed to bleed shadow, manuscripts that turned blank when read aloud, all traced back to a single lineage, those who had touched Umber Day. But perhaps the most chilling account came from a letter written in 1491 by a Benedictine abbot in southern France. He claimed that during the restoration of an old chapel, workers uncovered a sealed chamber beneath the altar. Inside was a sphere of obsidian resting on a pedestal of bone, surrounded by skeletal remains dressed in blackened armor. When the abbot touched the sphere, he heard what he described as the sound of time ending. The next morning, the sphere was gone, and so was he. From that day forward, the monastery's bells never rang again. Villagers said they could still hear them faintly in the fog, but the sound came from beneath the ground. It is believed the Black Knights reclaimed the relic, hiding it once more in the labyrinths beneath Europe. And yet its influence remained. Paintings from the late Renaissance depict dark halos not around saints, but around empty spaces. Composers wrote symphonies that ended on unfinished notes, as if silenced mid-breath. Even science could not escape. Newton himself wrote of a darkness that pulls upon the light, though the passage was struck from later editions of his papers. Modern scholars interpret these coincidences as myth bleeding into memory. But to those who follow the line of the Darkened Order, they are signs, evidence that the relic's prison still breathes. Each war, each plague, each collapse in the rhythm of civilization marks another pulse from within the shadow. If the relic ever awakens fully, the world will not end in fire or flood. It will fade quietly, history will unwind, names will disappear from stone, books will turn blank, and mankind will forget that it ever existed. For Umber Day does not destroy, it erases. That is why the Order endures. Not to rule, not to save, but to keep the silence contained. The Knight's black armor was not armor at all. It was a seal, forged from the same darkness they swore to guard. Each knight carried a fragment of the relic within his heart, bound by vow and fear. If even one fell to corruption, the seal would weaken. So they chose exile, anonymity, oblivion. Their final writings, hidden within a codex recovered from a collapsed abbey in the Pyrenees, end with a single phrase: when the relic breathes, the world must forget again. Perhaps that is why history never remembers them. Perhaps that is why we can never find proof. Because remembering gives the relic form, and forgetting keeps it asleep. The Last Brotherhood. As centuries passed and the world awakened to reason, the age of myth gave way to the age of machines. Science replaced superstition and faith yielded to logic. But in the hidden places of the earth, in catacombs beneath cities, in the ruins beneath cathedrals, the silence of the Black Knights remained. By the 18th century, the order had thinned to a handful of scattered initiates. No armies, no banners, no castles. Only whispers between scholars and wanderers who bore the same mark. Two wings crossed over an unblinking eye. They no longer rode into battle. They walked among the living, invisible, cloaked in ordinary lives. In letters exchanged between Hermetic societies of London and Prague, there are cryptic references to a group known as the Custodians of the Eclipse. They claimed lineage from the Dark Guardians of Antioch, men who kept watch over a relic that eats light. The correspondence stops abruptly in 1799, the same year the Rosetta Stone was uncovered in Egypt. Historians see coincidence. But in the lore of the order, nothing is coincidence, only recurrence. It was said that the discovery of the stone stirred the relic's echo. For the relic, according to legend, is bound to language itself, the first word spoken in creation and the last to fade when memory dies. Each time humanity approaches that forbidden threshold of understanding, the relic stirs, and the order reawakens to contain it. In the early 19th century, new movements rose: Freemasons, Rosicrucians, occultists chasing the wisdom of lost ages. Yet within their ranks, there were always a few who moved differently, who spoke little, whose eyes reflected nothing. Some believed them spies, others believed them prophets. But old records recovered from the Library of Vienna describe them simply as the black-veiled men. They appeared at meetings uninvited, listened in silence, and vanished before dawn. After each visit, one member of the society would disappear, taking his research with him. During the Napoleonic campaigns, soldiers unearthed a vault beneath Acre, sealed, silent, and filled with suits of armor too advanced for the medieval era. The armor was blackened steel, smooth as obsidian, seamless, and cold to the touch. When one soldier struck it, he claimed to hear not a clang of metal, but a faint whisper, as if voices lived inside the shell. Days later, a plague of fever swept the camp. The vault was buried again by order of command. Throughout the 19th century, fragments of their presence reemerged. In art, in rumor, in the edges of discovery. A painting by an unknown French artist depicted horsemen cloaked in smoke, riding through the ruins of Paris. A German composer wrote a requiem in a minor key called Cantus Nigrum, the Song of the Black. When played, it was said to drive listeners into dreams of endless corridors and distant hoofbeats. The original sheet music vanished after a single performance in Vienna. As the Industrial Revolution turned the world's faith toward progress, the relic's influence seemed to wane. But the deeper man reached into matter and machine, the closer he came to the same silence the order had sworn to contain. Electricity, magnetism, radiation, all invisible forces drawn from the void. To some, these were discoveries. To the Black Knights, they were awakenings. In 1903, a British archaeologist named Dr. William Hargreaves documented a strange finding in Syria, an underground chamber filled with carvings identical to those found in the Pyrenees centuries earlier. The same winged eye, the same inscription, "When the stars fall silent." Weeks after sending his report, Hargreaves disappeared. His assistant found his tent empty, his journals burned, and his compass pointing north at all times, even when turned upside down. During the Great War, soldiers spoke of figures in black armor walking through the smoke of the battlefield, untouched by bullets, faces hidden behind visors of polished shadow. Those who saw them claimed they came before bombings, before sudden fogs, before unexplainable silences where even artillery ceased to sound. One veteran wrote in his diary, "They walk before the storm, and when they pass, the world forgets what it feared." Governments dismissed the accounts as hysteria, the product of trauma. But after the war, secret branches of military intelligence began collecting reports of anomalous symbols carved into bunkers, trenches, and factory walls. The same sigil, the same mark, the eye. During World War II, the stories returned again. Pilots saw dark shapes moving beside their aircraft, keeping perfect pace with impossible stillness. In bombed cities, survivors described black riders moving through fire and ash, untouched. And in 1945, when the world split the atom, something unseen stirred. A declassified file from 1947, now missing from archives, refers to a clandestine Order X, described as an ancient silent brotherhood assigned to contain anomalous matter of pre-human origin. The report mentions an artifact recovered near the ruins of Babylon, a black crystalline object pulsing faintly with inner light. No official record confirms where it went, only that the transport convoy carrying it vanished in the desert with no trace. By the time the Cold War began, the idea of the Black Knights had dissolved into myth again. But in 1964, a satellite orbiting Earth detected a large metallic object moving against the planet's rotation. NASA labeled it an unidentified satellite. To the world, it became known as the Black Knight satellite, a mystery that persists to this day. Some claimed it was alien, others a lost probe. But in the hidden texts of the Darkened Order, one prophecy stands clear. When the relic leaves the Earth, the Watchers must ascend. Perhaps it was coincidence. Perhaps it was something older, awakening above instead of below. By the late 20th century, reports of the order became rare. Yet a few investigators, military, academic, occult, encountered the same symbols appearing in impossible places. The walls of nuclear facilities, the circuits of failed satellites, the dreams of men who had seen too much. They described a presence, human in form but without breath, cloaked not in armor but in the stillness of air. Their eyes reflected no stars, only the abyss. And then silence. The world forgot them again. Their traces were erased. Their myth folded into science fiction and conspiracy. Their relic buried beneath the noise of progress. But the pattern remains. Every few centuries, when humanity stands on the edge of discovery too vast, the same silence returns. The same mark appears, and the same shadow passes through history unnoticed. The Black Knights never vanished. They adapted. They evolved with time, wearing new faces, hiding within the systems that watch us, waiting for the next breath of the relic beneath the earth. They are the memory of forgetting itself, the final brotherhood between light and the dark. The return of the silence. The 21st century began with light, the glow of screens, the hum of satellites, the pulse of data connecting every soul to every other. We believed the age of darkness was over, that knowledge, once hidden, now belonged to all. But in that very light, the shadows grew deeper. In archives no one visits, digital records have started to vanish without trace. Entire databases deleted, files erased not by hackers, but by something that leaves no code, no signature, only a pattern. A symbol. The same symbol that appeared on medieval armor and crusader tombs. The eye that sees in shadow. It began quietly. Astronomers in Chile detected strange black reflections moving across the upper atmosphere, too slow for satellites, too structured for debris. They were called ghost orbits, objects that appear and vanish, leaving only silence on radar. Some dismissed it as malfunction, but one image, captured before deletion, showed a shape eerily familiar. A winged form, symmetrical, unmarked, like armor drifting in the void. Weeks later, the data vanished. All backups failed. And those who had seen the image spoke of a strange dream. Standing on an endless plain beneath a dark sky, hearing hoofbeats echo across the horizon. At the same time, across the world, ancient symbols began resurfacing in places untouched for centuries. In Turkey, an earthquake unearthed a buried stone chamber beneath Göbekli Tepe, carved into its walls the eye and the wing. In the Arctic Circle, scientists drilling deep ice cores found fragments of metal fused with unknown isotopes, shaped into the curve of a gauntlet. Tests dated it to before human metallurgy. Governments dismissed these as anomalies, coincidences, but patterns do not lie. From every continent came reports of the same mark, the same silence. Machines failing, clocks freezing, birds vanishing mid-flight. It was as though the world itself was holding its breath again. And then, in 2019, during a total lunar eclipse, astronomers at the La Palma Observatory recorded a brief shadow passing across the moon. Not a cloud, not a satellite, but something immense, unclassified, moving slowly as though it were watching. For exactly 3 minutes and 31 seconds, all communication frequencies worldwide experienced an identical interference tone, a low, pulsing resonance. When analyzed, the sound revealed a structure not random, not natural. It was language, ancient, pre-human, the same sequence carved beneath the ruins of Acre, when the stars fall silent. After that night, strange events accelerated. A monolith appeared in the Sahara, black and seamless, identical in composition to the relic described in 1947. Before scientists could extract it, a storm erased all tracks to its location. Satellite imaging now shows only sand, no structure, no trace. But a single photograph survived, blurred and incomplete. In its reflection, the faint outline of armored figures, standing in a half-circle around it. Who took the image? No one knows. The original device was never recovered. But the metadata places it at coordinates matching the lost convoy that vanished decades earlier. As the world entered the era of artificial intelligence, new voices began to emerge from the noise of data. Patterns that defied logic, signals hidden in the electromagnetic spectrum. Every time researchers decoded them, they found the same repeating structure. The eye, a whisper embedded in code. Not words, frequencies. A voice that speaks not to ears, but to memory. In 2023, a team at CERN recorded a momentary black fluctuation during a quantum field test. A void that consumed light for exactly 9 seconds. The instruments registered no temperature, no radiation, only silence. When the systems rebooted, every file stored on their servers for the past 7 years was gone. In their place was a single image. A knight, kneeling in darkness. No face, no shadow. Only the reflection of a distant, burning star on his armor. Since then, the pattern has returned, quiet, steady, inevitable. Lights flicker during eclipses. Data blackouts align with celestial events. And those who watch too closely begin to dream of the same thing. A gathering beneath a black sky, riders emerging from mist, and a sound like thunder with no storm. No one has seen their faces. No one knows their purpose. But the signs suggest the relic is stirring once more, and with it, the watchers. Perhaps they were never gone. Perhaps they simply waited for the world to reach the edge again. The same edge they guarded 1,000 years ago beneath the sands. Because every time humanity looks too far into the dark, something looks back. Every time light reaches too far, the silence answers. And when that silence falls again, the Black Knights will ride once more, unseen yet always watching, between what is known and what must never be known. They are not ghosts. They are not men. They are the shadow history cannot erase, the guardians of the unlight, sworn to keep the world asleep. And if the relic truly wakes, then the age of silence is not ending. It is beginning again. The watchers still walk. The world believes history is complete, that every story has been told, every secret uncovered, every truth revealed. But what if history itself was designed to forget? From the ashes of fallen empires to the silence of space, one shadow has moved beside us. Unseen, unremembered, unbroken. The Black Knights were never conquerors, never saints. They were the keepers of a balance older than time. They guarded something we were never meant to find, something that still waits beneath the silence of the earth. Every few generations, the pattern repeats. Wars rise, knowledge deepens, light expands, and then, just before the world crosses the threshold of the forbidden, they return. Not to destroy, but to remind that there are doors that must never open, truths that the human mind was not built to see. Maybe they are still here, in the places where technology falters, where data dies, where time seems to hesitate. Maybe the shadow in the corner of your vision is not emptiness, but a presence that remembers. A reminder that light and dark were never enemies, only guardians of each other. And so, the story of the Black Knights fades again into silence, until the relic stirs, until the stars fall silent once more, and until the watchers ride again, unseen, eternal, between the living and the forgotten. Because the darkness was never the enemy. It was the warning.